What's up, guys? This is Michael Sean from Unison Games, coming at you with another Trainer on the Road video special. And the other day I brought you a video talking about the Worlds cancellation, some of the effects that may have on competitive play in the Pokemon TCG. In that announcement, though, we were actually given another piece of news that I did not talk about, and so I figured we should make our own video just on that one piece of news, and that is that the Worlds tournament for next year is said to be expanded, which is kind of crazy. I haven't been in the game for a crazy amount of time, but it's very easy to see, at least in northeastern United States. The emphasis for competitive play is not at all on expanded, like not even a little bit. Almost nobody is running expanded events here in Connecticut or the surrounding states. And I actually really enjoy playing expanded. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm playing Eggrow currently, and I like that there's a lot of control archetypes. Like, I like that there's just straight up turbo decks. Like, I think there's a really wide variety in the meta, even with our last big expanded event being kind of dominated by Dusknoir and Trevenant, or Trevenant and Dusknoir rather. But even then, I think there were 3 of them in top 8, so we're still not seeing like a ridiculous domination in that tournament. I think there were 3 of those. There were 2 Eggrows, and then there were a couple other decks as well. I know Dullstar was big. So yeah, I like the meta of expanded. I personally, at Unison Games, rotate my events to where we'll have a standard, then an expanded, and then we actually do an unlimited, and it's more of a casual unlimited. Nobody's really playing like degenerate unlimited decks. In fact, most of the good players are just playing expanded at that event as well. And so I definitely like expanded. I support it wholeheartedly. I teach my new players that there are other Pokemon formats, and we try to encourage play in all of them. But that's definitely not the case for a lot of other stores. And so having an expanded Worlds, I think, is a cool opportunity for those of us that like expanded. I'm hoping that makes local stores, like, it incentivizes them to run more expanded events. I know that there was talk of one of the local stores that I frequent of adding a night that was expanded, and I really like the idea of adding a separate event that's expanded. However, I do think that when you add in a separate event, you're going to cut your attendance. For instance, I don't have a lot of free nights during the week. I own 3 different businesses. Like, I can't play Pokemon every night of the week, which is crazy, right? But it's just the way it is. So I'm not guaranteed to be able to make an expanded night if it's on a different night of the week than my normal Pokemon locals that I usually can attend most every week, so I find myself at locals. So I think that is that, but I also think that there is something to be said for rotating your events, like I do with mine at Unison Games. I think that there's something to be said of running some of your challenges or cups as expanded. I think that's really cool. So last time I played in an expanded local event was, I believe, 2 years ago, when there was going to be a Hartford Regional, and the Hartford Regional was going to be the expanded format. And so the local game store owners decided to make one of their, I think 2 of their events. I think they did a challenge, and at the time ARG was still running Pokemon events. And so they made an ARG expanded as well. And the idea was that we were prepping for the Hartford Regional, which was going to be expanded. And so I think that is a really cool idea, and I hope that people have the same idea for with Worlds being expanded. So the other thing that Worlds being expanded is going to do is have a pretty significant effect, I think, on who shows up at Worlds. So there's 2 things with expanded. One is that a lot of highly competitive players don't like playing in expanded. I don't really know why. the cards are cheaper in Expanded, so even like getting great staples is pretty affordable, which is weird because other games aren't really like that. But Pokemon definitely is, for the most part. I mean, you got to drop $50 on computer search. I actually saw a TCG player was at 65 on computer search last time I looked. It's probably dropped because coronavirus is destroying the economy, but I would assume, you know, that you're probably gonna have to drop that money on that card. That's expensive. Miku Dowsing Machine, spend more like 10, but that's still a more expensive card. But other than that, even like Shaman is not that expensive. You know, you're looking at you know, in Standard you're paying $40 for Dedenne GX, you know, or at least 30, and now you go over and the Shamans are like under $10 for every art, except for maybe the nice gold alternate art one. So like, yeah, I don't see why, but I do know that a lot of competitive players don't like playing in Standard. I think they either want to sink all their attention, or don't like playing Expanded, sorry. They either want to sink all of their attention to Standard so they can get as good as they possibly can at Standard, which is definitely something to be said for a more focused approach, until Pokemon starts putting some of their events in Expanded, and now you just count yourself out of Worlds if you're not going to play Expanded. So I think we're going to have a couple things. One, we're going to have some players that are highly competitive that just only started playing Standard this year, which means, yes, they're going to be highly competitive players, but they might not be as familiar or as good at playing Expanded. The next thing that I think we're going to have, I actually think we're going to have some people not go to Worlds because it's Expanded. You know, for some of us that are competitive players but don't get stipends or anything like that, you know, if you're not feeling confident about Expanded, you may not want to pay for a ticket to get into Worlds and a plane ticket and a place to stay if you're not a European local. Like, I think we're gonna see some people choose not to go to Worlds because it's Expanded. I definitely think that's gonna happen. And then the other thing that's gonna happen is, we talked in the last video about how I think more people are gonna qualify for Worlds because points and invites are rolling over from this season into the next season. And so we already talked about that. We're already gonna be having a lower caliber of player be able to make it to Worlds, which is good or bad depending upon who you are. But here's the other thing. When you get into an Expanded tournament, there's so like every deck that you play in Expanded works. You know what I mean? Like in Standard, there are certain decks that are tier 1, and then there's tier 2, tier 3. You know, like all the lower tiers, they're all decks that work. They just aren't as, they just don't work as well as some of the other ones. And the decks that work are somewhat limited. You might have like 15 to 20 decks that work, and then your tier 1s are like, you know, 4 or 5 decks, and your tier 2s are like 6 or 7, you know, whatever the numbers are, right? Well, in Expanded, all of that gets multiplied exponentially. So now you can make literally any deck you want work because the card pool is so huge. And so what people do is, because decks work, they assume that decks are good. And that's a big mistake, because a deck that works, it's nice for like casual and your like local plays. That's totally fine unless your locals are highly competitive. That's cool, but just because a deck works doesn't mean that it wins. It just means that you can actually play the game. So there's a difference between having a deck that works and letting you play the game, and having a deck that beats other decks that also work. So you have these tier 1 decks that they work, they appear to be setting up at the same speed as you, but once they get set up, they do better things than you do. And so you either get locked out of the game, or you get hit for more damage, or you know, they take more prizes, or whatever it is. And so we've got all these like kind of meme decks, like, you know, I don't want to like point fingers at specific decks because it is more challenging to do an expanded analysis of the meta, just because so many things do work and so many things are genuinely good. But one of the decks that got a lot of hype in this this last season that we've had for Expanded was Snorlax. And I think that Snorlax VMAX is totally fine. I think it's a fine card. And it sets up super well because it has Winona, which is just search for 3 colorless Pokemon, which is awesome. And then it got Chinchino in Sword and Shield. So you got this discard, you got this trade ability basically. and it's really good, and it sets up really easily, and it hits for 300 damage when it sets up, and that's a lot. But the problem is, it's linear, meaning it sets up super well, but we can all see your setup from a mile away, and we can just play cards that prevent you from doing that. And then the other thing is, 300 damage sounds like a lot of damage, but you're sitting there as a 3-prizer that I can probably knock out with sometimes even a 1-prizer, depending upon what deck I'm playing. And it just, you know, it's not as good as the other good decks. And so people might want to try to play, and that's an example of a deck that is genuinely good. It's just not as good. That's like a solid, like I would say, tier 2 or tier 2.5 expanded deck that you could definitely, like, I mean, it got top 8 at the last regional, you know, only one, but it did. And so, but that was also piloted by a very, very good player. Yeah, so you're sitting there with that. But more often than not, people try to bring decks that are, like, they don't beat anything. You know what I mean? Like, they set up super well, they hit for damage every turn, like they lock or something, but they don't beat anything. And so I think what we're going to have is every time I've heard of an expanded tournament or watched expanded play, there's so many of those kinds of decks running around. The player base is just super, like, there's a lot of variety. And I think that's going to be something that we may see for Worlds, because we're going to see people bring these, like, meme expanded decks to Worlds and try to do well. And so I think as somebody that's like a better player, you may actually be seeing more success at Worlds because of that, if you come and bring like a deck that's actually genuinely good. So anyway, those are my observations about the expanded tournament. If you are interested in expanded tournaments, chesting your chops and stuff, head on over to the Unison Games stuff. You can find us on Facebook and Discord primarily, and I'm also working on a website currently, so that should be up pretty soon. We'll obviously link to all of that stuff in the description. As soon as we're able to run tournaments again, once this Corona stuff settles down a little bit, we will definitely be bringing you some expanded tournaments. We're going to keep the current rotation that is still technically scheduled on Facebook, even though it's all canceled. And so you can see when is the next time we're going to be playing expanded, which hopefully is as soon as possible, because I am certainly getting ready to test my expanded chops, see what new things we have coming out in Rebel Clash, which is soon, which you'll be hearing about very soon in this channel, so watch out. So anyway, I want to hear your thoughts. First of all, what expanded deck are you the most hyped over right now? Second of all, what do you think about Worlds being expanded? Do you like it? It is something that is, I don't know if it's never been done before, because I haven't been playing the game for a long time, but it definitely might be the case. It's not been done very often if it has been done before. So definitely let me know. What do you think about it? So let me know in the comment section. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. And definitely keep on doing your Pokemon thing.